On the 15th of December 2012, I was a search and rescue paramedic winchman on duty, Rescue Bond 1. Rescue Bond 1 was a search and rescue helicopter based in the North Sea, providing cover for the offshore community. We were normally based on the Miller oil rig. The Miller oil rig is where the big red star is. There's two other search and rescue assets in this sort of area, and that's RAF Lossiemouth with the big red, yellow Sea King, and then Rescue 900, which are based up in Sunborough. On the 15th of December, however, it was a really bad storm offshore, so we had repositioned back to Aberdeen, to the relative safety of the airport. That provided a huge gap in the North Sea for the amount of cover that was being provided. There was other offshore assets, being vessels, on standby, and that's where this incident started. So like I said, I was a search and rescue paramedic winchman on duty. I was on duty with a winch operator and 2 pilots. We knew it was a really bad storm that night, so we'd pre-briefed the night before we'd gone on to our standby duty. We knew it was 60-mile-an-hour winds, 6 to 10 metre high waves. It was really dark, it was December, and we didn't fly with night vision goggles back in those days. At 4 o'clock in the morning, my buzzer went off, and we were called to an incident. We all mustered back into the crew room, we updated our MET brief, we called the Coast Guard, and we were trying to find as much information as possible as to what had happened. The information was really sketchy. The Coast Guard didn't really know what had happened at the time, but they told us that the Voss sailor had been hit by a wave and they put out a mayday call. The comms were really broken from the Voss sailor itself that morning. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. So we readied our aircraft, discussed a rough plan, and off we went. On the way there, we decided between the 4 crew that this was going to be an extremely dangerous rescue because of the sea states that were involved. 6 to 10 metre high waves. If you look at the inside of the roof here, that's the height of the swell that night. You imagine trying to get a winchman, pink dangly me, onto the back of this moving vessel. It's extremely difficult in the back of a moving helicopter. So we'd asked for another 2 search and rescue assets to go, like I said, RAF Lossiemouth, who were further north and west than us, and then Shetland, who are much further north. So we were halfway out. It was going to take us about an hour to get there, and our backup was way behind us. En route to the Voss sailor, we were discussing an update in our safety plans. Speaking to my winch operator, I was saying, well, we're going to need to get more information rather than just a boat has put out a mayday. So Coast Guard came back to us, and they said that there was a handheld radio on board the Voss sailor, and they'd managed to raise the mayday to the closest rig, and the only information that they'd got was that there was a loss of power, and there was 11 people on board. We were gaining broken comms with the Voss sailor as we were getting closer and closer. But when we were 10 miles out, we managed to get clear comms enough to speak to somebody. Communication was difficult because of the sea conditions, because of the broken language barrier, and the broken transmissions over the VHF handheld radio rather than a strong base station. The information that we got from the crew on board that night was that a freak wave had come and smashed through the bridge wing, killing the skipper on board instantly. It knocked out all the power to the Voss sailor, and it was now sinking and drifting to an oil rig. One of the crew members, who had been violently thrown out of his bed, awoken, managed to get up to the bridge wing, break his way into the bridge, and find his crew member dead. He grabbed that handheld radio and put out the mayday call. He didn't know if that mayday call had been picked up, but fortunately for him, when he started to hear the helicopter and us over the radio, he was very relieved. We told him to go down, get the rest of his 10 crew members, get them in their immersion suits and their life jackets, and huddle in the safety of a doorway until we got on scene, and we would be back in contact with them shortly. We were flying out at probably 1,000 feet, and we let down to approximately 40 feet above the mean height of the waves. The mean height being the average height of the waves, 10-metre swells. We're another 40 feet above that. So we're quite high, but as we approached the vessel, this is what we saw. The vessel was beam onto the swell, which is not ideal for a good winching position. And as you'll see in a second, the vessel disappears behind the waves. Now this was filmed on a DV camera, not full HD as we are today. That vessel completely disappears. And that's what it did for the next 2 hours. That's our aircraft, fortunately filmed by another aircraft when it arrived on scene. But this is what we're presented with now to try and get a winchman on deck and rescue 11 people off that sinking and drifting ship. So we get into this hover, we open the door, my winch operator Paul and myself discuss an emergency safety plan of how we're going to put me out, try and get me onto the deck. We've tried and tested this loads of times before, but never in these conditions where there's got 10-meter swell. The vessel's beam on, it's not in the correct position where we would normally winch to. But we were skilled enough as 4 highly skilled individuals come together to work as a team to effect this rescue. We said to the guys on deck, what we were going to do is we're going to lower a high line down to you, which is a bit of rope with a weight on it, for anybody who doesn't know. We want them to come out and we want to tend that high line to safely pull me on board when I get close to the vessel to dampen out any swings or big movements of that boat. So we hover above the boat. It takes us about 5 to 10 minutes to try and get that little bit of rope down to them. We get it on deck, and we're like, yes, that's a lot of work. Nobody comes out that doorway to tend the high line. For whatever reason, I think they were just so scared that they didn't want to come out that relative safety of that tiny little doorway with their other 10 mates in their life jackets and their immersion suits. We've now lost our high line. Nobody's tending that. It's attached to the helicopter and it's now attached to the boat. We cut the rope and we have no high line to get onto the boat now. We default back to the only way to get onto the vessel is by putting me down without that high line. So I attach onto the winch hook. I go out the door and we lower me down to an average height above that moving vessel, as you can see. I move in above the boat. We're swinging violently, the boat's moving, the helicopter's moving, there's 60-mile-an-hour winds coming through me. And when you're on the wire, you're getting hit by those 60-mile-an-hour winds all the time, you're getting hit by the downdraft of the aircraft. You can maneuver yourself enough. If you've ever put your hand out the window when you're driving down the dual carriageway, your arm's getting thrown back pretty violently. That's what I'm experiencing for the next 20 to 30 minutes trying to get onto that boat. I move across the vessel comes up violently, and my winch operator pays out the cable. I slam onto the deck, I'm winded, I'm confused, I'm dazed. I come off my winch hook and I let the winch hook go free. I can hear the guys on the radio coming through my helmet and saying, Andy, are you okay? I'm still dazed, I'm still confused. But I come back to them and go, yep, thanks very much, I think I'm okay. I get to my feet and I'm in absolute agony. Whether it's my back, it's my leg, it's my feet, I don't know, but I'm in pain. But I make my way to that doorway, to the 11 scared individuals that are standing there. I take off my helmet and I speak to them all. I try and assure them that everything's going to be okay, even though they see me land like a snotty heap on that deck. They're all wearing rucksacks, including their life jackets. And I was like, guys, and it's like, rucksacks off, you in your immersion suit and your life jacket, and that's all that's going to happen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stand at the back of that vessel. You're going to come to me one by one. I'm going to place a strap around your head. We're going to hold it on tight. I'm going to attach you onto a winch hook, and you're going to go up to the helicopter, and you're going to be nice and safe. And they go, yeah. They believe everything I say. So we devise a plan between the rest of the 3 crew members and the helicopter and myself. I move to the back of the deck. I can hardly walk at this point. My leg is in absolute agony. I slam my leg between 2 oil drums that are at the back of that vessel. And that's when I feel the excruciating pain shooting up my leg. I've done some damage to it, but I don't know what it is at that point in time. I'm on a sinking and a drifting vessel with 11 other guys that need to get off this boat, and that's all that I'm concentrating on. I stand there. We establish another high line, because now I can tend it as they pass it down to me. I bring the guys to me one by one. I place a strap over their head. bring the winch hook into me, attach it onto them, and then my winch operator raises that winch, they go overboard, and I dampen out the swing holding on the high line. As you can see, it's quite a violent maneuver when you get winched off to the boat and swing out into the sea until you get into that relative safety of the aircraft. But that's where the high line dampens out that swing. But the helicopter's still moving, the vessel's still moving, and you've still got 60-mile-an-hour winds. We do this for 8 people. The first 7 go up without incident at all. It's really nice and smooth. I think I'm amazing. It's great. We're winning. On the 8th winch, the boat decides to move again, just as we're winching out the cable. It wraps around one of the guardrails and snaps instantly. The winch wire parts, and I'm left holding the winch hook. This is the winch hook that actually parted that day, and I keep it as a memory about how things can go so badly so quickly. I'm on that deck. I've now got no winch wire. What am I going to do? Fortunately, our aircraft has got 2 winch wires. One of them's electric, one's hydraulic. The hydraulic is a lot slower. We're thinking, right, we'll just use the hydraulic, we'll just carry on, we'll get the last 4 crew members off this sinking boat. That's all that matters today. But my captain, who had a little bit of capacity at that time, he was a very skilled, experienced naval operator with lots of years within search and rescue. He says, guys, let's just wait. Let's talk about what we're going to do. We've got another 2 search and rescue assets here. One of them's obviously filming us. Why don't we leave with the first 7 and leave you on the deck, Andy, and you can go with the other helicopter? And I was like, that sounds like a great plan. Let's leave me on a sinking boat. So they depart. They're running low on fuel. They go back to Aberdeen, tea and medals all round. Everybody's happy. I'm on the boat. I send the guy who'd closely come to being pulled over the edge of that vessel whilst being attached to that wire and sent him back to the relative safety of that doorway. The other aircraft that was on scene filming us was the search and rescue helicopter from Shetland. It was an S-92, big red and white one that everybody sees flying around. I'd never worked with this aircraft. I'd never worked with the company. I'd never worked with the crew. They had lots of different procedures that they did, and it was nothing like anything that I'd ever done before. I switched my comm system over to their channel. Fortunately, that was the only thing that was the same. And across the airwaves came 2 familiar voices. I'd had maybe 1 or 2 pints with them one night up in Shetland. And they said, right, Andy, what we're going to do is we're going to leave you on the boat as the winchman rather than sending down another winchman and injuring him. And we're just going to rescue the rest of the 4 crew members off, and then we'll take you off last. And I was like, brilliant. So the rest of that rescue went absolutely fine. Established another winch wire. 4 crew members went off. The last person with most injuries came off last so that nobody had to look after them medically up on the aircraft. They sent down the winch hook to me, and off I went, back up to that aircraft. We headed back to Aberdeen. It was only at that point where my adrenaline had subsided. I was sitting in the aircraft, and the winchman paramedic from Shetland was on the aircraft that night. Then started to look at me as the injured casualty. We took off my immersion suit, exposed my leg, and my leg was broken. I spent approximately 2 hours on deck with my leg trapped between 2 oil drums, rescuing 11 people off the boat. We got back to base. I got in an ambulance, went to hospital, got a cast on, and within 2 hours I was back at work. Needed a cup of tea and a little debrief with everybody as to what had happened and what we were going to do next. Boss came in and says, what the hell are you doing here? Get your way home. A few months later, we were fortunately recognized for some awards. Myself and my winch operator, Paul, were sent down to London to meet this gentleman, and we were given the Billy Deacon Award for an outstanding rescue. We were also given the Shipwrecked Mariners Society commendation for an extreme rescue. That's us for tonight, or this morning. But guys, thank you very much for listening to me, and I'll open the floor to Any comments or questions?
Thanks, Andy.
It's all right.
I will look to the floor. Fascinating. And they let you keep it as well.
Yeah.
Well, on your mantelpiece now.
Yeah,
I guess.
sitting there.
Any questions for Andy while he's on the stage here? He'll be going around, obviously.
I'm around for another hour, and then I need to run off because I'm actually on shift.
Oh, yeah. Right. So he's round for another hour. Catch him if you can. Any questions? Yep, one across there. Rona?
Hi, is it working? Can you hear me?
No, that's not working. Just shout.
Try again.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Rona Lyle. I'm a Marine Safety Advisor for SSE. Thank you so much for that incredible presentation. I think everybody was really moved. Quite incredible story. My question is really about now how you all work together. So you spoke about how there's different organisations that coordinate these kind of rescues. And obviously there was different procedures, different companies. What changed after that event, and do you now do more like coordinated drills, or what improvements have been put in place?
Yeah, thanks. A lot has changed since then. So it used to be the RAF and the Navy did most of the search and rescue, and we were the search and rescue asset owned by BP at the time. And the Coast Guard did their own thing. So there was 4 different operators doing different things. Bristow's took over the UK Coast Guard contract, so there's now 10 bases owned by the UK Coast Guard, run by Bristow's. And 80% of us that work in Aberdeen used to work for Bristow's. So we now have all changed our procedures to work exactly the same. It's the same winch and procedures, even though it might be a different aircraft. But we don't really do any like interoperability like exercises. It's more tabletop exercises we do around that. But yeah, big rescues like that don't happen that often, thankfully. But when they do, yeah, we're on the same procedures now. But there was a lot of debriefing after that. It was like, how can we stop this from happening again? Luckily, the comms were always the same.
Thank you. Any further questions for Andy? Oh, Nicholas. Down at the front. Michael will come to you.
Thanks, Andy. It was great to have you here today talking to the group. Something I just wanted to add on top of Andy's presentation is that the search and rescue is provided in Aberdeen by the oil and gas industry. All oil and gas operators contribute to that service. This is a life-saving service that without it we would be quite exposed. There is no search and rescue provided from the Coast Guard, essentially between Inverness and Humberside. When there is an incident, it will be Andy and the guys that respond to it, and any vessel that's on charter to an oil and gas company, the oil and gas companies will essentially pick up the cost of that. Anything else will be covered essentially gratis. So we are covering the whole of the North Sea as the oil and gas industry. Something we are looking to do is bring in as much of the alternative energy companies, so wind, wave, etc. So yeah, I am also the chair of the oil and gas search and rescue that Andy works with OHS for. So if anybody's any questions on it, please feel free to ask me, and I'll be happy to take them as well.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Okay.
Any more?
Nope.
Nope.
Good.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers, Nick. Yeah, good,